Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Carpenter Critique. My name is Luke Carpenter. I am your host, and we are on episode 13, going over the Amazon Prime hit series, The Boys. I'm very, very excited to be talking about this. It has been a long time coming. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if you are a repeat listener, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you here. you know, I have actually had a few people ask me about the subscriber count and everything and how's the podcast going. I'm kind of going into this with no expectations, but we are increasing our subscriber count little by little every week. So maybe it's not like a boom and then all this growth. I think you kind of just have to put out content and hope it sticks. And honestly, I'm kind of just trusting my vision and going with what feels right and hoping people connect with and engage with the content, but also I hope people get something out of it and are able to relate to what I'm saying. And yeah, I wasn't really doing this for going viral or social media. I kind of just wanted to talk about psychology and use my brain. I need an outlet all the time, especially from work and for hanging out with friends. It's really fun, but yeah, I never really get to talk about research psychology and a lot of my favorite TV shows. I want to go in depth, as you can fucking see. And that's why we're here. It's been a really fun process, especially to engage with the internet. Nowadays, there's so much hate online, and the internet can be seen as just a very negative space. And so I feel really good that I'm putting out positive content, and I feel like a lot of what I'm trying to say is really positive messaging and maybe helping people with social and emotional learning and what they can pull from TV shows to make them a better person or make them more knowledgeable about psychology in a way. So yes, I really do appreciate the critiques and everybody sending me new ideas. I honestly love when people, even if they just have thoughts that are completely different than mine on a movie or TV show, or even on the article that I'm talking about, please feel free to share. I want this to be a place where everybody can share their opinion and no one gets shit for it. I have tried to open up a space for that too. So yeah, I really don't want this to be a place of judgment or negativity. I'm hoping that the Carpenter Critique is able to just spread positivity on the internet, which is really the main goal of this. And also for me to just yap. So yes, thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate it. I think we're up to 16 subscribers now. Woohoo! So you 16 of you, love you. Thank you so much for being on the journey with me. And let's dive in. So we're talking about The Boys. If you're watching this, you're probably going to get spoilers or you've already seen the show. I'm going to dive in just a little bit and talk about The Boys. So in a very Marvel world, the boys are superheroes often as popular as celebrities. What happens when the heroes go rogue and start abusing their powers? When it's the powerless against the super powerful, the boys head out on a heroic quest to expose the truth about the Seven and Vought and Homelander. So The Boys is a TV show created by Eric Kripke. The Boys flips the superhero script on its head and shows what if superheroes were bad? And if superheroes actually turned on humans and it was the humans versus the superheroes, or if superheroes ended up imposing their will on humans without powers, what would that be like? And so it's a really interesting critique on pop culture and society. It was very political to start, but it gets even more political as the show goes on. It's a really interesting idea. And I have been a fan of the show since it first started. I loved season 1. I was obsessed. And for a while there, it was getting really, really good. Season 2 and 3 are some of the most compelling seasons of television I've seen in a while. It's also based on a comic book series of the same name. So The Boys, in a sense, is a group of people trying to take down the big bad superheroes. The main superhero in contention is Homelander, who is kind of a version of Captain America and Superman. Basically, if Superman was a psychopath and was wanting to run the country because he's the most powerful man in the world. It's a really interesting premise for a show. I'm just going to dive right in. There is a popular internet theory, and I hate to say that I agree, but unfortunately, I feel like The Boys really peaked around season 2 and season 3, and it was just really good television. I felt like it brought really good insight into especially American society and American politics, showing where America was at, and in a very dramatized sense and very gory. It's very sexual, lots of sex jokes. It's very thought-provoking. until about season 4. Unfortunately, with this show, I would say around seasons 2 and 3, arguably when Marvel was really big as well. So when superheroes were being talked about all the time, and those were the big movies in the theaters, The Boys was doing its best because it was not only critiquing, I would say, America, but also entertainment and what is pushed out through the media companies and how much media can control the narrative as well. I would say there's a big critique on Fox News and all the Republican networks, and Vought is the big conglomerate company, and they use Vought as a way to emulate Tesla or Apple or the big capitalist companies, basically. They also bring in politicians in the world, and there's different characters. Like there's one, Victoria Newman is kind of an AOC representative, whereas Homelander is seen as a Trump representative. And so there is a lot of American politics at play as well. I would say The Boys as a show really thrives when it's showing us as opposed to telling us what to think. In seasons 2 and 3, The Boys strongly suggest that Homelander is basically a white supremacist or just believing in the power of conservatism. And so he is paired up with a Nazi woman in season 2. And there's just a lot of like, The Boys isn't afraid to show the ugly truth about America, which is that racism is still very prevalent. Homophobia is still very prevalent. There's a lot of social constructs that America, I would say, struggles to move forward with, like transgender rights or any abortion rights. And though I do appreciate that The Boys were so bold in seasons 4 and 5 to kind of just call it out like it is, I think a lot of art, especially that critiques politicians and world politics, is better when it shows you and is in a big metaphor. So when Trump rose in office and Homelander rose in power, it was showing us like, oh shit, what happens when Homelander gets into power? Or when we have someone become more powerful than we ever thought, and now he's in control of our whole country. And it was more of a showing us, and then in seasons 4 and 5, they're saying directly things that could be said in Congress bills. It's not a superhero metaphor. It's genuinely the superheroes being like, no transgender bathrooms, blah, 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 blah. And so I would say it dips in quality towards the end just because it ends up telling us what to think and telling us which side is which. Starlighters are a metaphor for Democrats, and Homelander supporters are more like a Trump America supporters type thing. And it doesn't super dive into that until season 4. And then it's like, okay, here are the sides. They have like critical soup theory that's supposed to be critical race theory. And so it's just a lot less of an innuendo and a lot more of a, here's what this is and here's what we're saying. We're very clear about what we're saying. And while I admire how brave they were in saying that, it's also kind of like, so where's the art? You're just kind of mimicking or copy and pasting what's happening in real life and putting it in the show. So it's really good. I will say it dips in quality in season 4. And then they introduce all these spin-offs. Basically, overall, The Boys do create this cinematic universe. And so they have a Gen V spin-off, which are about college kids facing the same struggles from the world, like what happens when kids get their superpowers and accidentally kill their parents, because it could be a very real thing that happens. And so we follow an orphan named Marie Moreau in the Gen V series, and it's a spin-off, and she's necessarily, in my opinion, when I rewatched it, they frame this Gen V character, Marie Moreau, as the chosen one to defeat Homelander. And that's one of the reasons why, especially the last season, I feel like just dips in quality, is because they don't even touch on Marie Moreau, one. And then second of all, for the last season of the show, they're focused on this plot that doesn't even end up affecting the finale, and it's completely useless. So there's 6 episodes that you don't even need to watch in order to get the full picture. It sucks because I love the show. I really think it's a great show, but I will say it's hard to watch television when it's past its prime. Or if you're watching seasons of a show and you're like, dang, I remember how good this show used to be, and it's just not hitting the same now. I think there's a lot of criticisms like that for Euphoria right now. There's other shows that have come out that are like, dang, has the show already hit its peak? And I would argue The Boys really peaked in season 3 when that was after Endgame. Avengers Endgame had ended, so the superhero hype was a little bit more over, and The Boys was a refreshing take on what superheroes could be, slash if we actually need to be in danger of something like this, and what capitalism can do if it goes too far. It was a really good critique, and then it kind of turned into this, like, okay, let's wrap this shit up before we get too far ahead, and we're already too far ahead, so let's just keep wrapping it up. It's a good show. I definitely recommend watching. I would say my favorite seasons, if I had to rank, it's so tough, but I would probably put season 2 first. I think Stormfront, the show, introduces that Nazi woman, like I was talking about earlier, who is a white supremacist from the 1930s. She resurfaces and becomes a part of the Seven, becomes very influential in American politics and the American superhero culture. And she kind of blinds Homelander to this, how much power he could really have if he lived up to his true potential. It was a really cool metaphor of how the right has really built up Trump into who he is today. And though, of course, I would say it's fucked up, and I disagree with a lot of what they believe in, it was a really interesting villain arc. And it gives you a little bit of a glimpse into if, say, the most powerful people in the world were superheroes as opposed to politicians or celebrities, how would that really affect us? And I thought there was a lot of drama, but it was really funny. It was a lot of gore. The Boys was at its best in season 2. I would say then maybe season 3. There's a lot of great episodes in season 3 as well. The plot gets a little bit deeper. Homelander gets a bit more scary. Anthony Starr is amazing as the lead role Homelander. There is a gravitas that he brings as he truly comes off as menacing and as psychopathic. And we're like, ugh! But he gets a lot of Emmy nominations, and it's totally deserved. He is outstanding start to finish in The Boys. Love him, but also love to hate him. Sometimes a good villain is really all you need to keep the show moving forward. And if he wasn't as strong as he is, The Boys should have ended a long time ago. Even in season 5, I would say Homelander is probably the best part of the show, even though he's awful and he's a terrible person. But Anthony Starr is truly captivating and such a good actor. He really comes into his own in this role. So that is awesome. We also have Carl Urban as Billy Butcher, who's always playing the same role. He's this tough guy and kind of emotionless, but he's a really good bully. And if he's on the good team, like if he's a good guy, then I'd say he's one of those anti-heroes that you always want to root for. So Billy Butcher is really great. Jack Quaid plays Huey, and Huey is the stereotypical protagonist where he's just an average Joe who gets involved because the show initially starts when he loses his girlfriend because a superhero actually runs through her on the sidewalk. A character named A-Train, who's meant to mimic the Flash or Quicksilver, someone really fast, runs through his girlfriend and she dies right in front of Huey's face. Then Huey launches on this big mission to basically save the world from how horrible soups can be. Jack Quaid does a really great job as Huey. He's consistently a very good protagonist. I will say he's kind of boring, but the show does need that with so many interesting characters who need the straight man who's just there to be the positive force, and that's what he is. There's also Starlight, played by Erin Moriarty. She is so good. She got a lot of hate for putting a lot of plastic surgery. She got a lot of Botox and lots of plumper in her face, basically. I think she's great start to finish. You do notice the work that she has done, but I still think she looks great. I think she looks really good. And also she is a symbol for hope. I would say Starlight gets less badass as the series goes on, but it's not due to her, it's due to the writing. They give her a lot less to work with. My favorite characters of the show are easily Kimiko and Frenchie. Spoiler alert, but Kimiko is the one who ends up neutralizing Homelander's power and turning Homelander from the most powerful superhero in the world to an average Joe in the very last episode. So lots to talk about. I'm going to rank the seasons. I would rank them season 2 is the best. Then we're going to go season 3. We're going to go season 1 next because it started it all so good. And then seasons 4 and 5 are definitely at the bottom. It just petered off. The writing quality is just so much lacking in the end. Eric Kripke is really great at starting shows and building them up. But much like Ryan Murphy, Ryan Murphy's the creator of Glee and Scream Queens. I think they have these amazing ideas for shows and they go on for a little bit and they're really great. Like Glee arguably peaks during seasons 2 and 3 as well. And then they just don't know how to end it with these characters, or they've moved on to other projects and they're trying to wrap it up before they start their new projects. So although I admire the creativity, it's also like, please finish well. A good ending is really hard to come by. And I would say The Boys does miss the mark, unfortunately. It's a perfectly milquetoast ending. There's nothing super great. I think Homelander's arc of becoming normal in the very end, or becoming like a human in the very end, is cool, but it's really short-lived because, spoiler alert, Butcher does kill him in the very end. And I think it would have been interesting if Homelander just had to live as a human, and not maybe in prison, but just living as a human and realizing how different your existence can be from being a superhero psychopath to a human psychopath, and seeing where that goes when you have no power anymore, when you're just a regular Joe. So I thought that could have been so interesting, and a missed opportunity for The Boys. There's a lot of missed opportunity in the final season. That's why I would say the final season is probably my least favorite. The smartest person in the world, Sage, makes a few mistakes, which are really uncharacteristic of her. I would say Starlight makes a few mistakes, which are really uncharacteristic of her as well. They have that spin-off show, Gen V, that is just completely wiped. It's canceled now, and the whole purpose of bringing The Boys full circle and involving Gen V was so that Marie Moreau and her crew could go up against Homelander and take him down, and she is barely mentioned in the final season. I feel like that was a big letdown for The Boys, and all The Boys fans. We were wondering how they were going to incorporate the Gen V characters into the regular show, and I don't really enjoy when shows make you watch the spin-off shows to know what's going to happen in the regular show, like The Mandalorian and Boba Fett. But also, they did the first season of Gen V in a way that I thought was really cool and interesting. And then the second season of Gen V fell really flat. Then the last season of The Boys fell really flat. So, I don't know. There was so much potential, and that's just lost. Whatever, I'm bitter about it, or I was bitter about it, but it's fine. A lot of people get happy endings, which is good. They end up killing off Frenchie, but Frenchie dies in a really powerful way, and he solves the science experiment to help Kimiko save the world from Homelander, so that's good in a sense, but there's just so much I would want to talk about, and I just don't have time in the 30 minutes that I give for the podcast. I would say, at the show's best, it showed what Hope can do for rebellion, rooting for the underdogs. The Boys are really great underdogs in a sense that they are up against the most powerful people in the world. And it's just a small ragtag group of people who believe that the world could be a better place. And they're going against capitalism, they're going against Homelander, they're going against politicians, they're going against mega billion-dollar companies. It's really empowering, but it just kind of peters off in the end to be kind of depressing, and lots of sexual jokes that are 1-2 punch, and then you don't really need to watch them again to laugh. I don't know. Oh, I'm so upset because it was so good. And I remember watching it with my friends and being like, this is amazing and really funny. And then towards the end, I'm like, golly, why am I watching this? Why am I still on this? It used to be so good. So, yeah. Definitely a show that maybe outlived its prime, but it didn't have a horrible ending. It just had one that was kind of like, meh. I would say the ending is very serviceable. It was all right. And even the character arcs, like Starlight, I used to think was such a bad bitch. She was believing in hope, and she was helping people, and she was what a true superhero could be. That was what she started as. And like, she was what we think of when we think of Marvel superheroes, someone who wants to do good by other people and represent humans and be a good person to humanity and use your powers for good. And though she doesn't ever fully quit that, I think she does a lot of really stupid decisions in the last 2 seasons. And even though she has a lot of people in her corner, she doesn't turn to them. She kind of just tries to self-isolate, and then she gets a happy ending with Huey. They do name their daughter after his ex-girlfriend. They name their daughter Robin, and I'm like, I just think that's a little bit weird, but it's fine, whatever. I wouldn't name the kid after my partner's ex, but that's fine. You do you, girl. Whatever you want. Mother's Milk ends up getting married, so that's good. But yeah, if you haven't watched The Boys, I do think it's worth watching. I just want you to know to lower your expectations for the end. But without further ado, let's just dive into the psychology article, because I feel like a lot of what I want to say is within the psychology of this show, and there's a lot of things that I can compare from The Boys. There's also just so much plot to go through. I think it'll come out better with the psychology of the article. So let's dive right in. The article I chose for this week is actually a dissertation that is called The Rebellious Mind, explaining which people become rebels and what personality works with rebellion. So why do some people become rebels while others don't, even in the exact same situation? And the core answer, or the big main idea, is that it's not just an environment like poverty or politics or religion. Individual personality traits, especially aggression, play a major role. Now, you may be wondering, who is the author of this study? And this is all done by a Miss Ashley Adam Townsend. I have looked for her and tried to tag her. I could not find her on Facebook. She just wrote an amazing dissertation and then pieced the fuck off the internet. Which, props to her. She has a doctorate of philosophy and political science at the Graduate College of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And this was published in 2015. So, 11 years ago. Crazy. The key argument from this paper is that most research suggests people join rebellions because of external factors. So, what kind of culture they're in, maybe what class they're in, oppression, or a certain social group that they're a part of. This dissertation says that that's incomplete. You also need to look at the internal factors, or the personality of an individual, to see why they're a part of a rebellion. Two people in the same situation can make completely different choices because they are psychologically different. A bunch of examples from this dissertation is there are 3 friends, a part of the same research study, all with the same background, the same beliefs, and the same environment. But one fights, one protests and then stops, and then one stays at home. Traditional theories can't explain this difference because they're all a part of the same environment, but personality differences can. The core concepts of this paper, broken down, is external factors versus internal factors. So the external factors, what most research studies cover, is your income, your education, your ethnicity, or your politics. If any of those are happening to you externally, there are a lot of reasons to join a rebellion or to join a protest. But the internal is what this dissertation focuses on, which is your personality, what makes you personally different if you join a rebellion, your level of aggression, and then your level of risk tolerance. Because behavior equals environment plus personality. So the star of the study is the trait of aggression within someone's personality. So people with higher aggression were more comfortable with violence, more attracted to risky situations, and also more likely to join rebellions. People with lower aggression tend to avoid risk, avoid violence, less likely to join a rebellion. So aggression helps predict who is willing to become a rebel. Now, a lot of you may be like, duh, but I would say a lot of Hollywood and a lot of the media that we get show us that there is power in a peaceful rebel, but psychology shows us that a peaceful rebel is pretty rare. If your personality is stable, the study argues that your personality forms early in life and it doesn't change much over time. So people who are aggressive early tend to stay that way versus people who are stable tend to stay that way when they grow into adulthood. This makes personality a reliable predictor of behavior. Now, why does this matter? Because not everybody is socially inclined or psychologically inclined to join a rebellion, even if they're being oppressed. This proves existing theories that people value costs and risks differently based on personality, not just external factors. An important clarification is that the author is not saying aggressive people are destined to become rebels. Instead, the author is saying personality influences probability, not certainty. If you're an aggressive person, you're not absolutely certain to throw a rebellion. Point blank and period. Not all aggressive people are rebels. But if you're a little bit more of an aggressive person and you're in a rather oppressive situation, there is studies that now show that you're more likely to join a rebellion or be attracted to a risk-based behavior to free yourself of this oppression. So there's some real-world implications to this, of course. Predicting conflict. So try to find populations that are more likely to produce rebels. Understand personality traits of fighters. What is some of the final takeaways from this study? This dissertation shifts the question from what conditions cause rebellion to what kind of people respond to these conditions by rebelling. Why I thought this was such a good example to pair with The Boys is because each of The Boys characters like Kimiko, Starlight, Butcher, Huey, Frenchie, Mother's Milk, they all respond to this rather oppressive superhero culture in a very different way. Of course, Everybody has a story, and each of the characters react so differently to this superhero supremacy. They all react differently to Homelander being their leader. Starlight is seen as this force against Homelander, where Homelander sees Butcher as his arch rival. Huey is seen as a protagonist, but also not seen as this huge rebel like the others. I thought there was a lot of room to grow with the boys' characters and this specific study. People don't all react the same to the same situation, and that's because people are wired differently. But still, there are a lot of people that would choose to rebel and join a rebellion, and it's interesting to know why, even if they have a different personality trait than the next. Millions of people are oppressed everywhere in the world. Only a tiny fraction of people actually fight. So the real question is why these people fight and not everyone else. The missing puzzle piece is psychology. So we're going to now identify the aggressive trait within each of our main characters. Not everyone becomes a rebel because not everyone is wired to be one. The boys shows this perfectly. In a world where corruption is everywhere, especially in our superheroes, violence is normalized and power is unchecked, everyone should respond the same way, but they don't. In this dissertation, like we're seeing, the same environment breeds different personality behavior due to the way people react is not always the same. So let's break it down by character. Billy Butcher is seen as this very high aggressive rebel prototype. So he is extremely aggressive, extremely attracted to high risk, and driven by anger and vengeance. Spoiler alert, but in the show, Homelander, the most powerful superhero in the world, rapes Butcher's wife, and Butcher's wife becomes pregnant with a superhero, not from a test tube. One of the main plot points of The Boys Season 1 is that all of the superheroes are made by a test tube. But Billy Butcher's wife and Homelander create the first baby that is just born into superherodom. Billy Butcher is your ideal rebel recruit because he has vengeance, and he wants to fight the oppressor, and he doesn't just accept violence, he is drawn to it. But Butcher doesn't fight because he has to. Butcher fights because that's who he is. That is his personality. Now, Huey Campbell is a very low aggressive rebel. He's not really attracted to the risk-based behaviors, but as I talked about earlier, he is a part of a very traumatic event that launches his fight against the oppression. He is very risk averse and he avoids a lot of conflict, but over time and over the show, he really embraces conflict. The aggressive part of his personality, I would say, is almost unchecked. And we see his dad, who is completely devoid of any aggression. And then over time, with Huey's loss of his dad, Huey loses his girlfriend. He almost loses a bunch of his friends. Huey builds this vengeance as well. And so he's a low aggressive personality turned to a moderate aggressive personality that's fighting the power. Huey proves that environment really matters. But personality determines how far you go. He joins the fight, but he never fully becomes Butcher. He always remains this person that's holding Butcher back and making sure that Butcher doesn't go too far. Now, Starlight is our non-violent resistor. This is where we see people tend to idealize a peaceful protester like Martin Luther King Jr. or even a lot of the Marvel superheroes are seen wanting peace, but the people that are normally tending to go to the rebellion are the people that want to fight violence with violence. Starlight is where we get this low aggressive person that wants to do good by humanity, but still the environment is not peaceful, so she has to do something about it to help people. She has a strong moral compass. She avoids violence whenever possible and seeks reform, not destruction. Whereas Butcher is a rebel that seeks almost always destruction of the oppressor. Someone who opposes injustice but doesn't default to a violent rebellion. Someone like Starlight. Not all opposition equals rebellion. Sometimes personality determines the form that resistance takes. So Huey resists and also tends to hold people back from doing things that they will regret eventually. Starlight is someone who is doing things for the greater good. And I think part of the reason why the last season is really hard to watch is because we lose this Starlight, and someone that we've rooted for the entire time becomes someone that is just this tortured soul. And I get it, girl. I get it's hard to fight the power, especially when you're the face of fighting the power, but I also wish they had just held her strong for one more season and she could just still be this badass bitch. She kind of is, but also we lose a little bit of potential there. We definitely lost potential with Starlight. Now, I kind of have a hot take, but I think Homelander is a rebel in and of itself, and arguably it's, I think, why people are attracted to Trump. Homelander is the extreme aggression rebel. So the unregulated rebel is what I'm calling him. His psychological profile is that he is hyper aggressive, super narcissistic, and has no internal restraint. He realizes that he is the most powerful person in the world at the end of season 3 and starts to decide that he can just do whatever he wants unchecked. Because he really can. No one can oppose him, and no one can stand up to him because he'll kill them. In season 5, we see this slow deconstruction of Homelander. He starts to kill off every single person that's close to him, because no matter what, if people are not worshiping him as God, then they are not serving him the way he wants to be served. And it's this extreme narcissism to where he really can't see past himself. He doesn't know where he ends and where God begins. He can't just be the number one person in everybody's heart like he is in his own. And he's unable to accept that. And so even with his strongest supporters, he chooses to kill them off because no matter what, no one is going to love him like he loves himself. He is this extreme version of a rebel where there is nothing that he can do to fulfill his aggression. It's always just going to keep going. I think The Boys at Their Best is showing what power does when it's unchecked and how scary that truly could be if we had a superhero that realized the strength of their own power and just went crazy. But then again, it's also like there was so much potential there and we just get robbed of what Homelander could have been. I think we do see the extreme violence that he shows, but in the end, I would say the finale is pretty rushed and to get him to be normal and then they kill him off. And it wasn't, not that it was anticlimactic, but I did feel after 5 seasons of buildup, it would have been cool to see what it's like with Homelander having no powers and how he reacts to that. I mean, we do get that one scene of him having a mental breakdown right before Billy Butcher kills him, but I would say it's a missed opportunity to see the potential of where Homelander could go. Part of the reason why I put him in here as a rebel is because the same aggression that creates these rebels can also create tyrants and create people that when their power goes unchecked, they're free to unleash their aggression on anyone. And so, while it's good to fight the power and remember who's the oppressor, it's also good to remember to keep your power in check, and you want to remember your humanity. So, the big insight into this is that the dissertation says that aggression predicts who joins a rebellion. Aggression predicts how power can be used, whether you resist it or you become the aggressive power. So, this real psychological divide, Butcher has a high aggression level, and he becomes a violent rebel. Huey is a medium aggressive level, and he becomes a very situational rebel. He fights the power when external factors are really in play. Starlight is a very low aggressive rebel, so she is a moral resistor. She looks for justice, not aggression without chains, basically. And Homelander is an extreme aggressive level, and he turns into a violent ruler and violent oppressor, not a resistor. The real world doesn't create rebels, but it reveals who already has the capacity to be one. This dissertation flips traditional thinking. Most theories say that violence is a cost, but in The Boys, Butcher sees violence as purpose. Homelander sees it as pleasure. Huey sees violence as a necessary evil to end, and Starlight sees violence as a last resort. So a same action, same external conflict, different internal experiences create different characters and different types of rebels. This evolutionary angle, so society needs a mix of personalities. The Boys shows what happens when the balance breaks. To many Homelanders, this creates chaos. To many Hueys, this creates a passivity. To many Butchers, this creates destruction. And to many Starlighters, this creates justice. Stability requires diversity of personality. The Boys isn't just about superheroes. It's about who people become when given the same world but different wiring. And this dissertation proves that difference isn't random, it's psychological, stable, and predictable. So, to conclude, in a world full of injustice, everyone has a reason to fight. But, like the dissertation suggests, only some people have the nature to actually do it and join the fight. I think The Boys is a very great example of how power can affect different personalities. You can have an extreme tyrant like Homelander, who power gets to his head and he must enact his power upon everyone. And you can also have people like Starlight, who have this resistance to power, but know that they have it and want to do good by humanity with it. I think The Boys is a fascinating case study about rebellion and about what aggression can do to different people. I wish I could keep talking about this for an hour. I am going to let you go. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to the podcast. I encourage you to go watch The Boys and to check out this dissertation. I will leave the link in the description below. thank you so much for listening to The Carpenter Critique. If you have not subscribed, you can hit that subscribe button. I post every Monday, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts and engagement in the content. If you want to follow me, I am at The Carpenter Critique on all social media platforms. Thank you so much, and have a great week. Bye!